Noon East Coasters and good noon Central. This is Mike Mickelwright. I'm calling in from a suburb of Chicago, Illinois. So today you've been invited and you're attending, and we thank you so much for attending our presentation. This webinar will be focusing in on how Kaizen values can prepare you for whatever's next. So it's a focus on Kaizen principles and our values and what we can do today, how we use them today to our advantage, to help society, to help our organization, and then how we use them also moving forward. But before we begin the presentation, I would like to thank our sponsor. Our sponsor is Appeal Production. Appeal Production is a full-service video agency who does a fantastic job. We've worked with them, and they've produced some high-quality end videos. And they're our sponsor, which means that they're providing this webinar to you for free. I'm going to turn this over to Andy of Appeal Production, and he's going to just mention something very briefly about how they've worked with the Kaizen Institute.
Thanks, Mike. This is Andy Van Hook with Appeal Production, and our goal is to inspire business growth with dazzling video, and we've been a extremely happy Kaizen customer recently, and our experience has been great. It's helped. We were going through the process of process efficiencies and finding where we were dropping the ball a little bit. And Jesse Martin's been a great help to us in that space. And it's really been fortuitous for us to have started this process 2.5 months ago or so, and where we are now. I think we really lucked out with what's going on in the world, that we had started becoming a little more lean and becoming more efficient. And we believe in it so much that we're going to continue on, and we're actually going to have another week-long session to tighten up even more and actually accelerate the process changes that we're going to be going through in the next couple of weeks. So we appreciate the opportunity to partner with Kaizen on this webinar and to sponsor it, and looking forward to the information you got today, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks a lot. And if anyone else is interested in sponsorships or partnerships with us, we're going to be producing a lot of webinars coming up here in the near future. And the sponsorship can be a great opportunity for you and for us as well in this time of uncertainty. So we ask you to reach out to us and tell us about your needs, and we'll work with you in many different ways. So we're very excited about that possibility. So on to our presentation. It starts off with a quote. Always got to have a quote, right? This is one of my favorite quotes. It's from Martin Luther King Jr., and it's very apropos for today's world. Martin Luther King Jr. said one time, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. I don't have to tell you that this is, of course, a time of challenge. It's an extreme challenge. And but a person, a man, a woman, a person, an organization, the true character of that organization and the people come out in times of challenges. And it behooves us to understand that we need to focus in on our principles, our values, our character as we navigate our ways through this storm. Another quote, and this one I use in many different presentations, and anyone I've worked with before probably have seen this quotation or heard me talk about it, and it is from Thomas Jefferson, and he said, "Be flexible in style, but unwavering like a rock in principle." And I like that because usually I talk about this in presentations where I'm focusing in on a style, a way of doing things, a way of working, whether it's a Kaizen event or a visual management system. And we have to be flexible in those styles, but we have to be unwavering like a rock in principles. And we have to understand, what are those principles? What are the principles behind what we're doing? Well, now in the bigger picture, we have different styles. We have our own organizational ways of working. And those styles are being upended, uprooted like never before. And yet, even as we navigate our way and develop our new styles, our new ways, we have to remain true to our own principles, our own values within your organization. And so it's this presentation that talks about the Kaizen principles and the Kaizen values, and what are the ways of working so that we can support our endeavor, our way forward. So what are those principles? Well, first of all, we have to define a principle. Principle is basically a fundamentally accepted rule of action or conduct that's generally inarguable, depending on what one is trying to do. So it's a way that we act. It's a way that we do business, and it's always inarguable, so that all organizations believe that this is a principle. This is the way we work. This is how we conduct action. This is the right thing to do. And principles are guidelines. They have enduring value. So it doesn't really matter if it's 100 years from now or 100 years in the past. There's still principles that are going to guide you, an organization, and they have that enduring value. And even at times of stress and uncertainty, like today, they're there. They provide value. And so we have to understand, what are those principles? What are your principles as an organization? What are the principles of Kaizen? So these tend to be generally unarguable, because they're self-evident. One way to kind of look at their ability to not be arguable is look at the opposites, or look at the absurdity if we lived our lives or ran our organizations based on being unfair or deceitful or baseness or uselessness or mediocrity. We know that that's absurd. That's not how a person lives their life. That's not how an organization lives its life. And so it's absurd to think like that. That's why these are unarguable. How does that relate to Kaizen? What are the principles behind Kaizen that are unarguable, that all organizations would pretty much agree, yep, this is a principle? Well, at the Kaizen Institute, everything that we do is based on the fundamental principles. Now, this is not just the Kaizen Institute. This is for all of your organizations, all of those organizations that are out there today that have practiced lean production systems, the Toyota production system, or Kaizen in any way. So these should be the principles. If you truly fully believe in what we're trying to do, it's based on these principles. And the first is probably obvious, but yet we don't focus enough on it. And that's creating customer value. And what is that value? And in today's world, the customer values are now changing. We have to find a different way. Their processes, their styles, their ways of working are changing. And so we have to change with that and find a way to still provide value to them. Hospitals are setting up new systems. We've offered our services to some hospitals, so when people get in line to get tested, to help them out. This is creating customer value. It will help them. So we have to rethink, what is creating customer value, and what is it that they're trying to do? What are they trying to improve upon? How are they trying to survive? Another key principle, and I think many of you know this, is flow efficiency. It's that constant focus on reduction of waste. No matter how it's done, looking at the flow through all of your operations, through all of your processes. Flow efficiency is being uprooted right now. We all know it is. The processes are different. Communication is different. The way we work is different. And right now, many of us are putting Band-Aids in place just to get by, just to make sure that we get the customers what they want, that we survive. So we've changed, we've uprooted our flow. And that's okay for now. It's that Band-Aid. But like any Band-Aid, a Band-Aid eventually has to be pulled off so that we can heal and get to the root causes of problems. And so as soon as we put those Band-Aids in place, we also need to start saying, how do we make this more efficient? How do we make sure that we're still surviving and making money? Gemba effectiveness is another principle, another key principle. What does that mean? That means going to the Gemba, going to where the action is. And some may think, well, I can't do that today. We're all working at home. We can't see the Gemba. But the Gemba's right here. It's right in front of us in many cases. In all transactional processes, the Gemba is your monitor or your monitors. It's right there. Can we see it? Can we watch it? Of course we can. We can see those processes. We can see them together as we're sharing our screens. We can look at those processes. We can do Gemba walks. We can do daily meetings. We can see those processes. And for those processes that are continue on because they're necessary business in a manufacturing setting, we can still see those processes through FaceTime, through video, and see what they are and see what's happening and continue to make improvements as the dust settles and as the Band-Aids, as we begin to remove the Band-Aids. Another key principle, of course, is people engagement. That's key. It is key. It's extremely important. Is to always involve people. How do we involve people? to make sure that they're involved in the improvement process. They're involved in the transactional processes, the changes in our ways of working. They have to be involved. They have to feel engaged in order to feel worthy and to feel like they're contributing to the success of the company and the survival of the company. And another key principle. These are, again, all generally inarguable. We all pretty much believe that this is the right thing to do with a Kaizen mindset. The fifth one is visual management, being able to see everything. And believe me, today in this world, I mean, we are blessed in a way, you might say, because of the technology that we have, because we can see how well we're doing. Companies all over the place are converting their manual visual management boards, their huddle boards, to electronic, because they know that it's useful and they know it can work, and they believe in visual management. The idea that we should be able to see how well we're doing every day, and are we meeting our objectives for that day? It still is possible. It still is very probable to do this very effectively. Those are our principles. This is what we believe in as Kaizen members, as members of the Kaizen family overall. And this is what we all believe in. And we can use this to our advantage to keep improving. So that's a principle.
Mike,
yes.
just to let you know, your video's frozen.
Okay, thank you. Try that now. So what is a value? So a value is more of an opinion. It's more specific to a person or to an organization. It's based on the organization's life experience or our perception of life. So as such, it can be arguable. It could be not every company is going to agree with it. So a company like IKEA might value low cost, low price. But another high-end department store may not. And so we have different values, organizations, people. Some values are principles. Some support those principles, and some are actually quite different than principles, depending on what your organization is doing. So this presentation is about the values. What are the Kaizen values, the specific Kaizen values that will help us to constantly and continuously improve as we move forward? So, 10 ways to never stop improving. How Kaizen values can help prepare us for whatever is next as we move forward. And that first way is to take time to show gratitude to everyone in the organization. Why do we do this? Or how do we do this? Well, actions that get recognized get repeated. It's as simple as that. When we are talking to, and we're recognizing what people do, the actions that they take, and even the ones that are not so successful, the fact that they tried. If we recognize, and we're not talking about rewarding necessarily, but if we recognize that in a public setting, then it's going to be repeated. The person feels obligated, they feel compelled to continuously make improvements and try harder. So we need to do that. And yet still, 1 in 5 employees feel that they are motivated by how they are managed. Only 1 in 5. That's kind of a sad story. Now, how do we do this? Can we do this in the virtual world? Of course we can. And in fact, in some cases, it might be easier for someone to do this, to recognize someone's achievements or someone's efforts. Because we're not face-to-face. Some people are more uncomfortable doing it face-to-face. But now we have opportunities in our daily meetings to do so, to recognize people and provide that motivation to want to do this again, to repeat, coming up with more actions, to repeat improving. But how do we do this? Well, number one, it's got to be timely. I mean, we can't wait for a month. We can't wait for a performance review. We have to do it now. And so, again, if your organization is involved in doing huddle meetings, daily meetings, this is an opportunity. Put it on the board. Put a little section on the visual management board for recognizing or thanking people for their efforts or their accomplishments. We've done that with our own huddle boards as well. We have a section on our virtual huddle board to make sure that we're recognizing people and take time to do that. Now, the other part of it is to be sincere. You know, saying something like, "Hey, good job, nice job," may not be sincere enough, especially if that's common or frequent. It means a whole lot more when someone is specific about it. "Hey, thank you so much for coming up with that report. earlier than we anticipated. Thanks for developing that webinar. Thanks for doing this or that, but very specific and what you liked about it. That means so much more to a person. And again, if you like that performance, it's going to be repeated. And we also want to be appropriate to the achievement. And that kind of makes a lot of common sense, right? The big actions, the big success stories, we want to broadcast those, maybe not just to our team, but to the organization as a whole. This is a success story. This is what we've done. This is really good. We can all learn from this. And other ones, manage within the team, recognize people within the team as appropriate. And of course, finally, we want to ensure that we're delivering the kind of recognition that the employee appreciates. Some people are shy. They don't like to be recognized in public. We have to respect that. We have to understand that. So it's oftentimes a good idea just to say to someone, hey, do you mind my mentioning this? Do you mind if I mention something in our daily meeting about what you did? Just to make them feel comfortable and understand that that's going to happen. So we want to be also aware of the efforts that are being made during the time of stress and uncertainty. There's a certain element about that. It's not just doing this in general, but it's even more important right now with all the bad news that's out there. We all need a little pat on the back. We need some help. We need some recognition. It helps to see this. It helps us personally. And of course, finally, remember to recognize in public and critique in private. Move the critiques away from the public setting, especially again in this environment. We want to critique in private, recognize in public. Our second way is to evaluate the current state of our business. And by this, many of you probably know that in any endeavor, anything that we try to do in the Kaizen world, we are constantly looking for ways to improve. But you can only improve if you understand your baseline. So almost everything that we do, we always say, where do we stand today? What's our current situation? From a business standpoint, from a process standpoint, from a product standpoint, from a quality standpoint, from a flow standpoint, where are we today? And now, in our current environment, it's even more so to do this at a high level, the very highest level. Starting off with people. What's the state of our people? The mind, the motivation aspect, and of course the health. What is the health of our employees? Who's sick? Who's not sick? And what do we do to maintain that? Many organizations are doing things like monitoring the temperature of their employees before they come in, primarily to protect those who are not sick and to protect the organization as a whole. Others are developing isolation rooms just in case someone comes up being sick during the day, and coming up with policies and procedures on how to do this. They're using the lean mindset to isolate and to put things in order, set things in order. But at the beginning, we have to understand what is our current state, and constantly understand the current state, and constantly understand where do we get more resources, or how do we reallocate resources, or how do we split up resources into different shifts. What's the state of your customers is another question. What are their needs? Whatever you've supplied to them, product or service, whatever that might be, that might change, of course. I don't have to tell you that. You know it, you feel it. But it might change for other reasons. It might be changed because of their customers and their suppliers and the current need that's out there in the workforce. Maybe there's a run on a new product or a product that's necessary, whether it's face shields or masks or some kind of medication, whatever that might be. There's a run on it, and that might affect your business. So the point is to talk to the customers, understand what the customers are going through and how that's going to affect your business, and then how you can help your customers. But you got to have that conversation with them, with all of the customers, to find out and really understand what is their current state. And then take an in-depth look at your core competencies. What is it that you do really well? You might look at an example like Hanes, the clothing company. They manufacture clothing very well, right? But their core competency is all types of materials that perhaps use cotton and bringing it together and stitching it. And so that's why they've gone ahead and they're starting to make masks, lots of masks, because that's the need, because they understand their core competencies. We're doing the same thing. Our core competency is transformation of organizations. Talk about transformation. It's happening left and right. Every organization is being transformed right now. And we're looking at ways and informing people of how we can help them, how we can help them during their transformation phase, to do it in such a way that we can still be profitable and still honor our customers' needs and their wishes. We can go back and look at that SWOT analysis. If anyone's ever done the SWOT analysis, perhaps at the end of last year for 2020, specifically look at your strengths and opportunities, revisit those, and also look at what are your new strengths and opportunities. Take advantage of those and say, these are our core competencies, these are our strengths, these are opportunities. What can we do in this environment today so that we can help society and our organization and our people? And while you do that, and while we're looking at our core competencies, then translate it to the next step and say, well, what are the additional needs? There's new needs out there. There's new needs in all of society that are not being fulfilled. And maybe there's certain things that we can do. I heard of a company that's is an event planner, but they have 3D printers. And so, you think about, wow, an event planner. They've offered now, and they're making face shields. Who would ever put those together in the past? But they looked at what they can do, and they also looked at what are the needs out there in society. What do we really need? What do people need out there? So let's do something. Let's help them out. And of course, we got to look at our financial situation. What are the revenue? What is the possible revenue? How can we keep bringing it in? How can we find a way to survive? How can we change our business practices, our ways of working, our services, our products, so that we can keep the trickle of revenue coming in to stay alive, to stay afloat? Look at your past revenue. Look at where your past sales were. Maybe there's products that can be resurrected, or look at the products that are coming down the pipeline. Maybe there's a way to focus in on those and get those out today. We want to look at our financial situation, of course, from a revenue standpoint and a cost standpoint. Looking at all the costs, looking at how we can perhaps cut costs today, whether it's leases on buildings, on offices, because everyone's working at home. But there's a new opportunity perhaps to cut some costs too as well, while still keeping people in the organization. Our next way is to dig into your business at a new level and really focus on data and facts. Get down in the ditches. Really understand what's going on there. What are those real facts? And develop scenarios. The best case, the most likely case, the worst case for any situation. I know we can easily probably relate this to the news stories that we hear every single day now, whether it's the president or your governor or the mayor of a city giving the current state of the situation. And oftentimes now we're looking at best case and worst case. It's the same thing of doing that so that we can plan for that. We see that on a high level, people planning for the worst case scenario and how many ventilators they're going to need, how many hospital beds they're going to need, how many doctors that they're going to need. We can do this. Organizations should be doing this too as well, if they haven't already. Looking at all different alternatives. And then develop plans on each one of those. Best case, most likely case, and worst case. Develop plans for each scenario. Make sure you communicate this to all the employees so that they understand. They understand what is the real world. It's not coded in fluff. This is what we're dealing with. It gives them encouragement. It might give them hope that in our best case scenario, this might happen. Okay, if we do what we're planning on doing, and if everyone's involved in coming up with ideas and new ways of working, we can do this. Because that's what we have to do. We have to provide hope, lots of hope for all of our people. We can't forget about them. Another thing that we can do is, as we dig into our business at a new level, is look at sister companies, benchmark our other countries or locales or industries, and our sister companies. See what they're doing, understand what they're doing, learn from them. There's so many different sources of information that we have right now on people making it and changing things. The creativity that is out there in the world right now, in the United States of America, in Canada, all over the place. The creativity is amazing. And I think that so many of us see this. It's just amazing what we can do in times of uncertainty and stress. So benchmark from others, especially those countries or industries that are ahead of you in the virus outbreak. Understand the current situation also of who and what can be done at home. What are our different resources? How else can we do things? How else can we still work while maintaining good flow, good business practices? The next way is to build out that detailed plan. Check for progress daily. Interesting. Detailed plan, check for progress daily. Very similar to what we should be doing in visual management in our daily huddle meetings. We talk about that. Many of you probably experience that and practice that. But we want to prioritize, of course, our actions on what we just covered, everything we just covered, and our revised SWOT analysis. Prioritize our actions based on what? Well, based on impact to our business right now. Short-term impact is probably much more important right now than long-term impact. So we want to prioritize our actions on what could have the most impact on revenue, on cost today. And it might not just be based on impact, but it also might be based on difficulty or cost. And so we have to have a way to prioritize our actions. And of course, assign due dates and responsibilities, but also look at resource planning and try to balance the load between employees so that everyone's working, everyone's busy working, and project those projects, those actions that we're doing, and understand, try to make a projection of how many hours are required so you can come up with a good plan in doing so. And then, of course, make everything visible. All the actions should be visible. Some of you might be using a Jira or Asana or some other cloud sharing service. Make sure that the status of actions and how we're progressing is visible to all frequently, just like we would do in our old world. Some of my clients, they've gone ahead and they've digitized their manual huddle boards. It almost happened overnight. It was a matter of a few days, in which they were doing huddle meetings. And within a few days, they still wanted to continue out the huddle meetings because they saw the values in the huddle meetings, and they signed it as a project to someone. And they came up with some very nice virtual electronic boards for their huddle meetings that are effective. They need to be improved, but it's still going. It's still working. Actions are happening. Deadlines are being met. People are not skipping a beat. So due to less face-to-face interactions too, it might be a good idea to consider 2 meetings a day. That's what we've done. We have one first thing in the morning and at the end of the day to kind of recap on how well we did. I've noticed some huddle meetings, they've been extended in some companies from their normal max of 15 minutes to 20 or 25 minutes max. And the reason is as I mentioned, is that we don't have that face-to-face communication. So maybe it's a good idea to consider those alternatives too as well. And as we do so, make sure that we realign our resources so that we continue to motivate and to move ahead on what we're trying to achieve our short-term objectives. The next way that I want to talk about is getting everyone involved. How do we get everyone involved? How do we make sure that they are truly all involved? And how to cultivate a happier team overall. I know happiness kind of sounds like an interesting word, you might say, but I think today it's very important that we focus in on happiness. And one way to do that is to make sure that everyone is somehow involved and they feel worthy. Everyone needs to do that. They need to feel that they are helping to improve, helping to make things better, helping to produce, feeling value, giving value to the organization, to their families even. How do we do that? And why do we do that? It's so important to do this because an idle mind is the devil's playground. You've probably heard that quote before. And so we start thinking worst case scenarios, all the bad stuff. Overthinking is the biggest cause of unhappiness. Keep yourself occupied. Keep your mind off of things that don't help you and think positive. We need to occupy our minds with challenging projects, challenging things to do so that we are motivated and we bring this back to our family. We help our organization. We try to do the best thing while still respecting all of the laws and the rules in order to get through this crisis, but to move ahead and not wallow. So it's always nice to challenge people, give them a project, and challenge them throughout the entire completion of that project. Put the ownership on them, allow them to do that, set stretch goals. We've done that in our organizations. We've done things that we haven't, we're giving webinars and we're trying to give more and more webinars. And we have stretch goals on how many webinars we can give now per week. Same thing with articles. We're doing the same thing. So everything has kind of changed. But we're not just saying, hey, let's develop a webinar. Let's modify our training position, our training format. Let's set stretch goals so that we can go ahead and achieve those quicker, faster. But this is there to help people and challenge them so that we can think creatively on how we can achieve what we want to achieve for the good of the organization and help ourselves personally. And this is the time to experiment too. Allow people to do pet projects. I've had a pet project that I've wanted to do and I just haven't done anything with it, and I'm going to do something about it. It's something that I'm excited about. And your people might be encouraged. You might challenge them on, hey, is this the time to introduce something, to become creative, to introduce a pet project that you want to do, if, of course, that it's going to help in meeting our short-term financial obligations and our short-term objectives. If it's aligned, then this is an opportunity to go ahead and try those things. And of course, I'm sure many of us are doing this. It's hilarious, I think, how many memes are out there being shared and TikToks are being shared. You just see them all the time, constantly. And I'm sure that not only us, but you are also sharing those as well. And they do help, don't they? They do help. And it helps us to, for a split second, for a few seconds, to get our mind off of the dreariness of the current state and focus on the positive and laugh. I made an attempt, and it was like this. And this was a couple weeks ago when everyone was out hoarding toilet paper. And so I shared this, made a little table in my front yard and pretended like I was selling toilet paper. So that was my little attempt. It got a few laughs. But someone did actually come back to me and they sent me a Facebook message and she said, "Are you serious? Did you really do this?" And I wrote back to her and I said, "Oh no, I would never sell free lemonade." That was a joke, and I don't know if she got that one either. But anyway, I digressed. Let's move on to the next way. The next way is use your network of peers. Find support and find solution. Now, this one's kind of both, personal and also organizational. But today, isn't it weird? I mean, the personal lines and the organizational lines, the business lines, they're smeared. They're hard to delineate the difference. I mean, we're having meetings, as I'm sure all of you are, and people are in their relaxed clothes. This is the first time I've worn a jacket and a dress shirt in a few weeks. It's a different world out there, and we're having meetings, and someone's kid is crying in the background, or a dog's barking, or whatever it might be. I mean, we knew that this was happening, of course, before, but now it's just multiplied, and so things are kind of they're mixed. Our organizational life, our business life, and our personal life. So why would using our network of peers matter? Well, to get that support, because if we're supported personally, it's going to help the organization as a whole, but also to find solutions. So I've heard of many people reconnecting with friends and family. I'm doing the same thing, more so than I have in the past. And but what I find interesting is when you start talking about the interesting stories about working and how they work from home, you find new ways. You find some interesting ideas, new ways of working that can help your organization. We're kind of doing this mass benchmarking, you might say, with our friends and our family, and it's very helpful. I know on Saturday night I'm going to be meeting with my we get together once a quarter usually, and so we're doing a Zoom meeting, and I know we're going to be talking about business and what we all do and how we're coping and how the good things that we're doing to make meetings more effective. Of course, connect with your specific LinkedIn and Facebook groups to do the same thing, to benchmark, to get better ideas, and then connect with those sister companies within the network. The Kaizen Institute, as some of you know, is a global company. We have business units all over the world, and some of those experienced, of course, the virus sooner than we did, and we're learning from them. But more importantly is that there are meetings now that are being held with the business units, and this is replacing our big annual conference in a way, you might say, to some extent, because we can't meet. But now we're meeting more frequently to bounce off ideas, create ideas, talk about what we're doing, and stimulating thought on how to generate new business. So the sister companies, especially from around the globe, can be very helpful just to spend that time to come up with new ways of working by using our network of peers. And personally, if struggling, it should be known at work. People should know this, or someone should know this. We practice in the lean world, in the Kaizen world, that all problems must be made visible. And that's including personal problems, personal issues, because we're really struggling, or someone's got a friend or a relative that is perhaps affected by what's going on. Get advice, get some help, and that's only going to help the organization as a whole as well. Our next way is to make a list of opportunities and then work really intensely on the top 3. Okay, well, this sounds a little bit similar to before when we talked about a detailed plan, but there are some things that I want to focus in on, and that is the key word of opportunities. Many of you know opportunities and what opportunities are. What I did was I kind of did a self-brainstorm. Brainstorming we've all heard of before. Many of us have heard of this and done it. And we know the idea behind it is that no idea is a bad idea, and the quantity of ideas is the best. And we all have personal ways of doing things. I personally like to self-brainstorm first before sharing with the group. And so I did that, took a pad of paper, started coming up with different ideas and thoughts on what to do to help the organization, to help the organization move forward, to challenge the organization. Because as we say, problems are opportunities in disguise, right? We all have heard that or something similar to that. And so but you like to look at that word, opportunity, which is, again, is part of that SWOT analysis, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But we want to focus in on those opportunities. But we want to get creative. This is where the creativity comes in. And so you might even challenge yourself to just do this. And I've done this with my daughter. We just came up with, when we brainstormed ideas about how all other companies out there, what companies out there or individuals out there in the world are benefiting today because of what's happening. Just start coming up with ideas and who's actually benefiting, because we know that there's a lot of organizations that are. I mean, there are organizations that are hiring, whether they're trucking companies or Amazon or grocery stores or medical device suppliers. There's a lot of companies out there that are benefiting. And then say, all right, after we've done that, then say, well, what are the new industries or services or products that we can look into doing that is one of our core competencies that we can help or use to help profit from that? What can we do to make to take advantage of those opportunities? How can we get creative to do so? And then do that individually. And after you do that individually, have others do that same thing individually as well. But then bring them all together. Start bouncing ideas off of each other. And then as part of what we want to do is, some of those ideas and thoughts, those opportunities that we come up with, we want to narrow it down, like we talked about before, prioritize them. What are these ideas, these opportunities that we can take to take advantage of, to move forward with, to take some action on that will help? And those priorities should be based on, again, short-term impact, very high importance, long-term impact as well, and ease of doing so or cost of doing so. And then take that detailed action plan that you developed earlier and modify it, update it with perhaps these new opportunities. Now, the next way is to get your office organized, clean up your electronic files. Here's a real opportunity. In fact, there's going to be a webinar that we're going to produce just based on this one topic alone, because there's some real cool opportunities there that I don't think we take advantage of. And yet today we have the opportunity to take advantage of it more so than ever. Your electronic files. Many of you probably know that, if you could somehow turn your electronic files into something physical, it might look like the picture on the right of this slide. Doesn't look like that because it looks all kind of neat and orderly, but in a way, this is how a lot of electronic files and folders really are. and this has bothered you, maybe for some time, but you've never done anything about it because it seems to be a low priority. It's kind of interesting when you think about that, though, because is it really a low priority? I know that I remember Chevron doing a study years ago in which they looked at office productivity of their office workers. And they looked at their time and how they spent their time, kind of a massive day in the life of analysis, you might say. And they found that the average office worker spends about 0.9 hours per day searching for files and folders. So roughly 1 hour a day out of roughly an 8-hour day is unproductive. It's waste because they're searching. And yet we don't ever think of it that way. It's just the way it is. It's just work. But this is our environment right here. This is our environment. Just like a person who works in a manufacturing environment, their environment, you can see the waste. It's easier to see. But electronic environment, you really can't see. It's harder to see. But it's there. I mean, if 12.5% of an office worker's time is spent searching for stuff, wow, there's a real opportunity there, I would say. And so here's an opportunity. Can we do a 5S Kaizen event virtually at home with a team of people? Absolutely. It's a great opportunity. We can improve the efficiency of all of our transactional processes from home. Right now, as today, is that opportunity to do so. We can employ easy tools like sort, set, and order, shine, standardize, sustain, all the 5 steps of 5S that so many of you are already aware of. Now, how do you do that? I mean, just as a quick example, sort. I mean, let's say that we've identified our scope. Our scope is this particular folder in our network. That's just a massive mess. And we've lived with it for years, okay? So how do we do that? Well, what do we do in a normal 5S event? Well, one thing that we do after setting the scope is, we assign responsibilities and who's going to do what, who's going to operate the mouse, who's going to operate the controls so that we can all see this. And then maybe we create a 5S red tag folder. You have this red tag folder. It's a temporary folder that we use. And we're going to go through all the documents. We're going to have our subject matter experts in there. We're going to move all the documents or move a bunch of documents into the red tag folder based on our criteria. Well, what's our criteria? Well, you make that up. The team makes that up. Maybe the criteria is if no one's opened this document for the last month or so, we're going to move it into the red tag folder because it's suspect. It's suspect of not being used or being inaccurate or whatever. Or let's say a document hasn't been revised in 5 years. Well, that one you might move into a red tag folder as well, because if it hasn't been revised, there might be a good chance that no one's really using it. So we do that. We go through the process. It's no different. It's just not physical. It's electronic. But the process and the principles are still absolutely the same. And you can do this with a Kaizen event. But you really got to go back to one of our earlier ways, the way number 2, in understanding the current state, and kind of look at and evaluate and say, how much, like Chevron did, how much of our time is spent searching? How does a person spend their time in front of their monitor? And categorize that as value added and non-value added. Find a way to understand that current state and understand and monetize the costs associated with it so that we can set a target and we can show that this isn't just a project for housekeeping. No, we're talking about productivity gains right now. They're real and they can happen. Now, also you can expand that in the office environment, in the organizational environment, but also in your personal environment. We can do the same thing with our own laptop or phone or iPad. We can download all of our photos that we've been storing. I know I've got a few that I've got to download and organize myself, and I'm sure many of you do too as well. 5S your Outlook calendar. Find a way to manage that properly and set your criteria. Standardize on that. Find a way to sustain that so that you don't have massive amounts of emails. Or you can find a way to cut down on the emails. You develop a process for that so that you're not researching and reopening and looking for documents over and over and over again. And then you can also just even sitting in front of the TV at night with your family, and you can start to 5S the apps on your phone. Might be an interesting little project, and teach your kids how to do it too as well. So these are some things that we can do, and I really encourage you to look into this. I personally, and I know the Kaizen Institute has led a lot of events in the area of 5S'ing electronic folders for the purpose of increasing office productivity. Our next way is to challenge your team. Find areas of innovation. Stretch goals, set them for revenue. These are new goals, though, in the new world, for new business, for ways to produce and create. Challenge the team on this. Always end a meeting or an event or training by setting a challenge for the team members. Make sure that that's understood. I remember going to, occasionally I'll go to a big mega church. And what I liked about going to this church every so often was that there's always a key challenge at the end, a way to get better. And that's motivational. And so we want to challenge our people in the organization. And we challenge them also by asking deep Socratic questions. So if you've ever been trained in Gemba walks, if you've ever been trained in coaching and how to do virtual Gemba walks, and by the way, that will probably also be another webinar coming up soon. I know, shameless plug. Anyway, but challenge them by asking those deep Socratic questions in which we get them to think. First of all, get them to see the waste. What is the waste? And then get them to think and ask them about their assumptions. And why do they think that way? And how can that be changed? And then call to action, get them to do. This is all about challenging our team and use those skills that you may have on Gemba walks and coaching to challenge the team to move ahead in this new world. With that challenge, it's not just about the idea, but it's about implementation. Challenge them on developing the plan, the design, the methods, the standards, the goals. Challenge them on how to execute. Have them do the whole package. Have them innovate. Encourage an abundance of ideas. You can teach them about, of course, fishbone diagrams and brainstorming. We know that, right? But also that concept idea relationship where I have an idea, here's an idea, everyone's like, oh, cool, that's a good idea. Are there more ideas? I don't know. Well, what's the concept behind that? You go to the next level, the higher level. What's the concept behind this idea? The concept is this, okay? And from that concept, we come up with new ideas. Challenge them, because our goal as leaders, as Kaizen leaders, is to always challenge on that. We want to open up people's minds and not just go ahead and take the first idea or the first solution or the first countermeasure that comes to mind. Kaizen's leader's role is to challenge people and say, what else did you think of? What other alternatives did you come up with? How do you know this is the best alternative? This is how we challenge, and this is how we get them to think. Our 10th way is to keep calm and carry on. Pause, plan, and proceed. Now, this is kind of on an individual level and also kind of on an organizational level. It's both. The organization needs to keep calm too as well. We're in a period of crisis. We all know that. But at the same time, this crisis is happening quickly. I'm sorry, it's not happening. It's happening over a longer period of time. It's happening slowly. It's not like a crisis where there's a hurricane that's imminent and it's going to hit our plant in a day or two. That's imminent. We have to do something right now. This crisis is slower, we all know, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. But we see it, and we do have the time to pause, to reflect, to do some hindsight. So personally, and as well as an organization, we have to breathe, take it in, think, listen to ourselves, listen to what the organization is doing, listen to what our core competencies are, listen to what the customer really wants and they really need today in their new environment. From a personal level, we got to keep that balance. We're not moving. We're sitting in front of monitors, all of us, right now. One thing that I've done is at home, I'll jog in place. I'll jog around the house and do laps. And I spread it out throughout the day, kind of like single piece flow for exercise instead of all in one batch at the end of the day or in the beginning of the day. So I might do 5 or 10 minutes here, 5 or 10 minutes here, 5 or 10 minutes there. And I use my Fitbit device more often than I have used in the past because I noticed that the number of steps that I was taking was diminishing. What does this have to do with the organization? It has a lot to do with the organization. Remember what I talked about, the intertwining between the personal side and the organizational side? That's what this is. And for people to be creative and do all the things that we've talked about before, they have to take care of themselves. You've heard the saying that sitting is the new smoking. The other one you probably didn't hear was from a professor at Mayo Clinic. He says, the chair's out to kill us. Some truth, in that. It's not good. And so for the good of the organization, we should be looking at how do we exercise? How do we keep the body going so that the mind keeps going and we can generate new ideas and actions? It's worth it in the long term to take 5-10 minutes out to do something to physically so that we improve our overall output for the organization. There's business to be done. That's why we need to do this. There's customers to serve. There's society to replenish. We need to do this. We have to take care of ourselves in order to do that. And one of the most important Kaizen behaviors, there's many, but is to plan slowly and act quickly. And this is kind of saying the same thing as this value, the value of keep calm and carry on, the behavior of slowly developing a plan, thinking about all the alternatives, thinking about all the failure modes that could happen, trying to find ways to mitigate those issues and those problems or potential problems. That's a Kaizen behavior. And so we want to still plan slowly. We can do so even today, which allows us to act quickly and to come up with fruitful actions, successful actions, much more quickly than if we just start taking actions. And that's the problem today, right? Is that we feel like we're stressed. We feel like we have to do something now. And so we might be going down the wrong road. We need to stop and pause and breathe so that later we can plan and act quickly. So from Kaizen Institute to you, to everyone, everywhere, every day, we hope that you do be well, stay well, take care of yourselves. Our thoughts are here with us internally as well with all of you. And so we really want to make sure that we're all doing our part to stay healthy and to get us all through this one way or the other. We do have upcoming webinars. We have online training classes that we will be publishing. Some of the examples of things that we'll be focusing in on are doing virtual Gemba walks from home. So it's kind of a mixture of developing new webinars for today's environment like this one, but also our other training classes that we teach and preach all the time because they're still absolutely so appropriate for today. So doing virtual Gemba walks from home, online management and mood elimination, how to sustain lean improvements, zero defects journey. OSHA came out with already in March. I couldn't believe this when I first saw this, is that it was so quick. But OSHA came out with their guidance on preparing workplaces for COVID-19. And we want to share that with you in a webinar and show how that can tie into Kaizen, Kaizen tools, our ways of working. Lean sourcing for complex change, strategy review and risk management, lean production, internal logistics. We might have some yellow and green belt classes, and we also might be doing some interviews with our clients, just a kind of more informal type setting where we get an idea of some success stories and what they've done in this new world. Our contact information is located here. You can see it, and we are available to do online training and webinars. And online Kaizen events, yes, we are. And we're looking at ways and we're searching it into some real neat software packages in which we can virtually do almost all Kaizen events, almost the entire Kaizen event virtually, and to be successful in doing so. Online coaching. I've done some of this with some of my clients, specifically where we're doing Gemba walks, or maybe we call them Gemba sits. And they're coaching, and we've done this online, and it works very well because you can see the process right in front of you. It's easier to see actually electronically, so there's a benefit. We can customize. We're interested in working with others, and as I mentioned at the outset of this presentation, there are sponsorship opportunities. We ask you to contact us if you have interest in sponsoring our webinars, and perhaps even have an input into the webinars that we produce. So that's going to wrap it up for this webinar. I'm going to turn it over to Chuck. Chuck, if there's any questions that might want to be asked by anyone, I really appreciate your attendance. I hope this was worthwhile. Please contact me, contact us. if you have any questions, or if you would like to sponsor an opportunity, or if you have suggestions on what you would like to do from a webinar standpoint, from a training standpoint, we're all ears right now as we get creative. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thanks, Mike. Folks, before we close this out, we've got an opportunity to ask questions of Mike about anything that's in the presentation or about the Kaizen Institute. Also, if you open your meeting chat, you will see that there's been a link put into that chat in a couple of places where you've got the opportunity to give us feedback regarding the presentation. So you'll see the link. It's from forum.asana.com. Please feel free to click that and give us feedback. If you've got questions, you can feel free to unmute or to type them into the chat. And if you do that, I'll ask the question for you. One thing, we are recording this session, and we do intend to make the recording available to the folks who have attended. So we'll be sending you a link to that as well. So go ahead. Has anybody got questions at this point in time? I do have one to get us started here. I actually received this via email, believe it or not. So, Mike, how do you benchmark virtually, and how do you determine who to benchmark?
Great question. There's many different types of benchmarking. So, and all of them have to do with different factors. Obviously, you can benchmark, if you have this privilege, you can benchmark sister companies. That's very easy to gain information. You're going to gain a lot more information from them because it's available, because you're all part of the same company. Now, what you benchmark can be very, very valuable, especially in this time when everything's changing so much. But there's also functional benchmarking, and that's take us, for example. We are a transformation company. But we help to transform companies, other companies. But we're also training, and we're coaching. And there's other organizations out there who provide training, and they're not competitors of ours. And we can, and we should, benchmark those companies to find out, well, what are they doing? Because we're not competitive. So it's kind of like you look at the functions. What are the functions you do in your organization? And maybe you can come up with some far more creative ideas and ways of working by contacting those organizations that provide the same function, but in a different industry. So there's a couple different thoughts and ideas of how to do it. They both have different pros and cons, but they're both beneficial.
Thanks, Mike. Anybody else have a question? I've got one other here, Mike.
Okay.
What new opportunities did you explore specifically going into the crisis here?
Ourselves as an organization, I would take it. That's what you mean? Or?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. What other opportunities did we explore? Well, I think that I kind of mentioned this at one point in time, but we talk about Kaizen events, and of course, many of you know that Kaizen events are a big part of that. Is you got to go to the Gemba, you got to watch the real process, you got to see what is really happening, and so forth. So how do we do that? How do you actually do that? Well, again, if it's a virtual process or some of the process is done virtually, then we can see it all. We can still see the process just the same way as any other process that we've seen before. We're just not sitting behind someone or standing behind someone at their cubicle or in their conference room. So we can see that entire process. Now, if it's out in the physical world, we can still take advantage of technology and use FaceTime and videotape and watch the process. And if someone is in there watching the process, and we can still map out and see all the different steps and communicate and get all the data and see all the waste It's just going to take a little bit longer to do, but it's all still possible. So those are some of the things that we're looking at doing. And then as far as mapping them out, instead of mapping it out on a big old wall, big brown piece of paper, we're looking at electronic software that's marvelous. It's fantastic, where they have Post-it notes, and you can identify the Post-it notes. We can lay it out. We can do everything we can do manually, electronically. So those are some of the things that we're looking at, and we're doing actually. We're actually doing, but there's many other things that we're doing, as I mentioned earlier, with doing Gemba walks, virtual Gemba walks, very, very effective. And so we've changed. We're sticking to our principles. We just changed our style. We've changed our ways of working, and it works very well.
Thanks, Mike. Are there any other questions out there?
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, folks. I promised you a 1-hour seminar, and we're 61 minutes at this point in time. So I'm going to thank Mike. Mike, good job on the webinar today. I'm sure we all learned a lot from that. And we'll let everybody who's still with us know that there will be upcoming webinars in the future. You will receive, much as you did today, an invitation to attend those as well. And we want to thank you for your attention, and look forward to seeing you again real soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.